Hello, I'm Mike Fontanopolis. I'm academic coach for Springdale Public Schools, and today I want to talk about the mock exam that you guys took and the LEQs that you wrote. There were three of them. The two that I'm going to talk about specifically are the ones that were most answered, and the one that was most answered by a lot of kids was the number two one, and that was that prompt regarding the Columbian Exchange. But first, I want to share with you too that I'm going to be using the traditional advanced placement from the College Board uh, rubric regarding this, and you get a point for thesis, you get a point for context, you get 2 points for evidence, and then of course you can get up to 2 points for analysis and reasoning. And I'll go over those as we continue into this. And of course, there's always these are everybody should have these can get their hands on them. They're free. They're all over the internet. And of course, when you get to a summer institute, they will go over those with you as well. From my experience, I've been reading now for the College Board and for World History since 2007, and I've read a few of the LEQs, or what we would call back in the old days, the comparative essay or the CCOT, uh, and mostly I do the DBQ. But when you would clean up a DBQ, then you'd go over and then you would help with the comparative essay or the CCOT essay, whatever it was that year. And then of course now it's become the LEQ, the long essay question. So I've got some experience in this, and so let's see what we can do and get a good answer and maybe make some sense of what your students are doing, and maybe this will help guide some instruction in the future. So there you go. So the question was: in the period of 1450 to 1750, oceanic voyages resulted in the Columbian Exchange, which transformed the eastern and western hemisphere. Period. So they basically are starting these LEQs out with just a statement, and it's kind of a statement to kind of get the student's mind kind of wandering where they're going, what they want, time period, geography, geographical location, the phenomenon that is in history at that moment that's taken place. And then here comes the statement, or what they would like for you to do. Develop an argument that evaluates how the Columbian Exchange affected people in the Americas in this time period. A lot of students that I noticed, when they would get um, a little bit into their writing, they might talk about what's going on in the Americas, like Europeans and slaves and things of this nature, when in fact, that's not what the question's asking. The question's asking the effects of people in the Americas. So they're talking about what's the effect of Native Americans? What's the effect of the Columbian Exchange? And I can't underscore the importance of slowing down and reading the question and understand what it is, what the question is asking. Almost always, it's a very simple idea that you can um, spend a lot of time with, and and here it is. I mean, again, you can think to yourself, no kidding why a lot of kids answer this, because it says Columbian Exchange, which is a very popular and should be popular idea in world history that we should all cover. But then the kids wanted to talk about all different angles of the Columbian Exchange, which was what's going on in Africa, what's going on in Europe, what's going on in the Americas. This question specifically is asking you to stay in America and talk about what's happening to the Americans. Evaluate how the Columbian Exchange affected peoples in the America. So, first thing I would do as a student is I would stop what I'm doing and I would start brainstorming. Americans, as a result of the Columbian Exchange, are going to die. They're going to die because of smallpox. It's supposedly known as the largest death scene on planet Earth in our history. We don't know how many Native Americans are going to die because of that smallpox moment. A lot of kids were, I shouldn't say a lot of kids, there were some kids coming in and mixing up the disease there, which cuts out on the ability to analyze later on. So we need to know that they're dying, smallpox, etc. The remaining Native Americans are going to get to put to work in silver mines. So there's a labor moment. Here's a social moment. Number three, They're later combined with other races. Here comes another social moment. This is that amalgam that we're talking about. And if students, I did see the word amalgam here and there, not very much, but a lot of kids would, if they did speak about this, they would just talk about the mixing of races, which is true. And then finally, polytheistic religions are largely replaced with the monotheistic Christianity because of the Catholic missionaries that are coming in. So again, there's a lot of different ways that you could go at this and answer this question. And again, to get your points to really fulfill the rubric, really all you need to do is just pick two of these. If you can just do two of them on the day of, and so there is a little bit of brainstorming, and then of course you'd like to be able to pull on that thread, like I tell my students, kind of what you want to pull on that thread. What do you know about smallpox? Why smallpox? And so then you can, well, the Europeans, they had large draft animals. They got used to smallpox centuries before. The Native Americans didn't have large draft animals, so they had no immunity to uh, smallpox. And so here comes this disease as a part of the Columbian exchange. One of the things they're going to exchange is, of course, diseases. The smallpox will have the deadliest effect on the Native Americans. Again, another exchange is we're going to extract silver out of the New World, and we're going to do it through the Potosi silver mines in Latin America. You're going to do it in the silver mines there in Mexico, and you're going to get the Native Americans to do that, and you're going to make them sign those uh, MITA labor agreements that you would see in the world of Peru. Then you can start to get into the idea of encomiendas, uh, that sort of stuff. So you could write about that. You could get into into the racial issue. Here comes the African slave. Here comes more native, or here comes more Europeans. And there's going to be those that run away from plantations. There's going to be the mingling of these races. And you're going to get this whole new castus that takes place of, uh, of the different Native Americans. And it's all, again, it's kind of like India. It's all based on race. It's all based on skin color. Whites were at the very top, and of course, you move your way down throughout those varying skin colors through there. And then finally, the polytheistic religions, especially the Aztecs and the Incas. But you get into these bloodletting religions, and they're going to give way to these Christian religions, and again to these monotheistic Christian religions. And you can see students talk about how the Native Americans kind of can go towards these monotheistic religions, especially Christianity, because there's a mother moment with Mother Mary, which coincides with maybe some of their matriarchal religions that they were dealing with as well, or that they had already had in their past. So again, there's there's pieces there that they can get into, and you can get into how um, everybody was extremely the missionaries were aggressive because they were trying to implant their religion from their home country, be it Spain or be it Portugal, and trying to basically outpace each other with their converts, if you will. And so you could get into that. So a lot of that I'm talking about now is the analysis of it. Each one of those things you can pull on and really get just piles and piles and piles of good thought. So there you go. That's going to make up the body of your essay. Um, but we got to do that thesis first. And so a good thesis here is anytime you see a thesis, I just simply want to come back and restate the prompt. So develop an argument that evaluates how the Columbian Exchange. So there's the beginning of it. The Columbian Exchange affected peoples in the Americas, and that time period was from 1450 to 1750 by killing many Native Americans because of disease, and then by replacing those Native Americans with a mixed race. let's say a mixed race of native peoples, Africans, and Europeans. I just picked out two, and you got a good. That's a good thesis statement right there. Um, some kids want to talk about the thesis statement in a very. And by the way, we're talking about a defensible claim, and this I can defend. This is what a thesis statement is. It's a defensible claim. Some kids might try to do the Columbian Exchange affected people in the Americas from 1450 to 1750 a lot, and then they stop. Or they might say things like, uh, just extremely, uh, again, extremely vague or extremely general statements, positive and negative, had positive and negative effects. You see that quite a bit, those words, positive and negative. And then they think, well, I'm going to talk about positive for a paragraph and negative for a paragraph. And I've never seen that go as a thesis statement. Um, Over the years, I'll say this: over the years, the advanced placement people have lightened up on the thesis statement. It used to be a very high bar to get the thesis statement. Nowadays, it's not as tough. However, I still don't see them accepting things that are in those types of general thoughts. It's always good to have a brainstorming session first to figure out what it is that these folks are trying to get at. And it's always a big history moment. It's never a micro thing that, oh, I missed on that Tuesday, so I won't be able to answer that question. No, no, it's always a big history moment. And here we see, millions of Native Americans are going to die, and then they're going to get replaced by them with themselves and a mixture of themselves, if you will. That's one of the things that you can do. You could have gone into the anyway. You see what I'm saying? Now that's what you talk about in a very slight way. This is it, because you're fixing to really explode all these things, and then you can start to talk about your complexity, or I'm sorry, your contextualization. I like to think of contextualization as, why was this question being asked? What led to this? And that's the way I put it. Some people want to do this in two different paragraphs. I think it's as easy to put it into one paragraph, because my next sentence will be to put this time period into context. I like that word context because it tells the reader, me or whoever you're sending this off to read, oh, here is the student attempting contextualization, because they're using the word context. And so if I were in the habit of trying to teach my students how to achieve context, use the word context, to put this time period into context, or to put this phenomenon into context, or however you want to say it. But you want to talk about why we're here, or how we got led to this point, so to speak. To put this time period into context, the world was largely disconnected from the Americas up to this point, or up to 1450. But because, and that now you can get into why we're here. Why are these Europeans sailing all over the Atlantic world? Why are they trying to get around the Cape of? Why aren't they going through the middle in through the Mediterranean? Why are these Europeans wanting to get? Well, they're coming out of the Dark Ages. They can't float through the Mediterranean, because that's where the Italians are, and they're in there. The Italians are in there with the Turks, and they're gathering up all of those goods that are coming from the uh, Chinese world and the Indian world. And so that's bottled up. So I got to find a new route to get to that place called the Far East, if you will, or the East Indies. And so you've got these Portuguese and you've got these Spanish competing with one another, who are newly found nations, and they're trying to um, get out there for their gold, their glory, their God. And here you go. That's why we're here. And so and then you can get into now the buildup of the rest of your essay. And so there's your contextualization. Um, and there you've already got 2 points. You've got your thesis, you've got your contextualization, and then you can get into the rest of the essay. And again, this will help you with that. You can do it one of two, three ways. If you're a really, really bright kid and you were able to come up with all these things and you want to write forever, then by all means, I would I would pinpoint those out in separate paragraphs. If you came up with two of these, which is very normal, then again, paragraph 3, paragraph 4, and you're going to, again, like I say, hold them underwater until they quit bubbling. You leave nothing to the authors or to the readers assumption. That explain it all out. And I promise you, if you can do that with two of these, you're gonna do really well. If you can get into the because sentences, if you can get into the why the smallpox was such a problem for the Native Americans, where the smallpox came from, if you can get into, if maybe you're going to do silver mines and what's going on with that silver and why use the Native Americans, and if you're going to get into, maybe you are a student that really understood the Costas system and how Native Americans throughout Latin America are going to be, there's going to be the color scheme, if you will, of the whites at the very top, and down at the bottom you're going to have this mestizo, the mulatto, and all of those names that you can get into that are pointed out in your Acorn guide. Again, now you're talking about really making that essay burn and sizzle. But again, the big issue that I saw with this essay for students was the fact that a lot of students only did one event, and then they didn't really want to stay with it. They did, maybe the Native Americans died, and then maybe they would associate a different type of disease to it, like malaria, which is not the problem. Or they would do influenza because we're in our own COVID flu pandemic. Maybe they got that mixed. It's smallpox though, so it's kind of like you need to know your disease there. And then of course they would start to then talk about maybe the European, the slave, how many slaves were coming over, and that's with, and again that, because they think of the Columbian Exchange as happening through a triangle or a three-pronged event. And here the question is wanting you to get to just the Americas. So hopefully this helps. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what they were looking for, and then maybe you can get some ideas on how to present this to your students in the future. And again, I think a lot of times if the students just backs up and understands that what they're doing is they're asking a question that is fairly big, and it is something that I learned in it. It is, I promise you, it's going to be something that we talked about or that you talked about in school. They give you three of these things to choose from, and again, when you're running to the, I'm going to pick up the Columbian Exchange, now read it, make sure you understand what they're really asking, develop an argument that evaluates how the Columbian Exchange affected peoples in the Americas, not peoples in Africa, not peoples in Europe, peoples in the Americas. So there you go. There's that. Hope this helps. And I'm going to send another one on the other question on prompt number 3, and be looking for that. Until then, talk to you soon. Bye bye.